Long before the Spanish brought the alphabet, before schools, textbooks, or typewriters, Filipinos were already writing. They wrote love letters, legal contracts, royal decrees, and poetry. They carved characters into bamboo, inscribed them on palm leaves, and even tattooed them into skin. But today most Filipinos can't read this script, not because it was forgotten, but because it was erased. This is the story of Baybayin, the ancient script of the Philippines that was wiped out, and is now fighting to come back. If you went to school in the Philippines, you probably learned English letters, Spanish names, and maybe a few Tagalog words, but you probably never learned Baybayin. Baybayin is a pre-colonial Filipino writing system used across Luzon and parts of the Visayas before the Spanish arrived. The word Baybayin comes from Baybay, which means to spell or to trace in Old Tagalog. It's composed of 14 consonants and 3 vowels, and it's read from left to right, just like modern writing. It's not an alphabet, it's an abugida, where each character represents a consonant-vowel syllable. You modify the symbol with marks to change its vowel sound. It's elegant, efficient, and uniquely Filipino. Baybayin wasn't reserved for kings or scholars. It was used by everyone, from merchants and lovers to warriors and farmers. Filipinos used it to write letters, mark ownership, record oral laws, pass down poetry and chants, create personal seals and signature glyphs. When Spanish missionaries first arrived in the 1500s, they were shocked to find that many Filipinos were already literate in their native script. In fact, in some areas, Baybayin literacy rates were higher than those in Europe at the time. One of the most powerful discoveries in recent years is the Laguna copper plate inscription, dated to 900 CE. Found near Manila, the plate is written in a mix of Old Malay, Sanskrit, and native words, using an ancient script related to Baybayin. It mentions a debt pardon issued by a local ruler and proves that Filipinos had systems of writing, law, and governance over 1,000 years ago. This is solid evidence that Filipinos were not uncivilized or illiterate before Spain came. They had their own systems, their own records, and their own script. So why don't we use Baybayin today? Because it was deliberately suppressed. When the Spanish colonized the Philippines, they saw Baybayin as a threat. It was a symbol of native identity, a tool of independent thought, and a system they couldn't fully control. So missionaries taught Latin script instead, often punishing natives for using Baybayin. They destroyed records, rewrote documents, and replaced native education with religious instruction. Over generations, people stopped writing in Baybayin, and eventually most forgot how to read it at all. But Baybayin didn't vanish completely. Some symbols survived on old documents and church records, traditional clothing patterns, tattoos of mountain tribes, and signatures of Filipino nobles on Spanish-era contracts. Even national hero José Rizal studied Baybayin and wrote about its value and history. In recent decades, artists, historians, and activists have begun reviving it, bringing Baybayin back into schools, murals, fashion, and even digital fonts. Baybayin tattoos have become a statement of ancestral pride, inked not just on skin but on memory. Baybayin is just one of several native writing systems used across the islands. In the Visayas and Mindanao, other scripts existed, like Badlit in the Visayas, Kulitan among the Kapampangan, Tagbanwa script in Palawan, and Hanuno'o and Buhid, still used by some Mangyan tribes in Mindoro today. In fact, the Philippines is one of the few countries where indigenous writing systems are still actively used by traditional communities, passed down by hand, not textbook. These scripts prove that literacy in the Philippines was diverse, complex, and ancient. Today, Baybayin is experiencing a resurgence. You'll now see it in government logos, on currency designs, in Filipino hip-hop and streetwear, in schools and educational campaigns. In 2018, the House of Representatives even passed a bill to make Baybayin the national writing system, a move that would require public signs and documents to include it. Though not yet law, the movement shows that Filipinos are reclaiming their script. Baybayin is not just decorative, it's a symbol of resistance, identity, and memory. Some people say, why bring back Baybayin? We already have English, Tagalog, and Spanish, but that's the point. Those are the languages of colonizers. Baybayin is the language of your ancestors' hands. To write in Baybayin is to remember a time before the erasure, before the forced forgetting, before the narrative was rewritten, and in a world that tries to standardize, to flatten, to simplify. Baybayin reminds us that Filipino identity is layered, rich, and rooted in deep time. It's not just about looking back, it's about writing your own story, on your terms. Baybayin was never truly lost, it was hidden, suppressed, almost silenced. But like the Filipinos themselves, it survived. And now a new generation is picking up the pen, not to copy the colonizers, but to reconnect with something ancient, powerful, and proudly Filipino. You are the descendants of people who wrote laws without paper, who carved poetry into bamboo, who signed treaties in their own script. Their hands are your hands now. So write, remember, reclaim. This is Wander Signal. Subscribe for more stories that were almost erased until we chose to remember.